الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون. All praise is due to Allah who created the heavens and the earth and made darkness and light. Yet those who disbelieve combine equals with their lords. Today I will be talking about two topics. I will start with the first one and then I'll tell you about the second one when I finish with the first one. Deal? And I would like to also get collaboration, so I'm not going to be sitting here doing all the talking. Expect me to ask. It's too cold here and might get us to a bit of a sleepy mood. So I need to make sure that we're always reviving ourselves. I presume the rest who didn't show up, they're busy with the open house, I would assume. Yeah, probably. And you guys, mashallah, you did your open house already. Mashallah. Very good. That's proactive. So the first topic, inshallah, is about sincerity, about ikhlas. Sincerity is one of the etiquettes of Islam. And it's a very important topic. We sometimes tend to have it or take it for granted that we're sincere, but we don't really spend time to think about what is it, how do we make sure that we have the attributes of a sincere person? How do we know what is sincere, what is not? How do we decide specific actions or environments that we're in or a situation that we're in that would really help us, guide us to define to define whether we are acting in a sincere way or not, and also reflecting on the impact of not being sincere. So I will try to skim through this. I'm thinking the dhuhr is 1:23, so I do have about a couple of hours to talk about that. So inshallah we have enough time. It's a lot of information, so please pause and ask me if the information didn't go through, or I may make a mistake. You can get my attention to it. Inshallah, I'll be more than happy to clarify it. So I will talk about, there are 6 pillars really that the topic my talk on sincerity is on 6 pillars, if you wish to call it, or 6 sections. The definition of sincerity, and then I will talk about the commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be sincere. So this sincerity is not someone's opinion, it's not someone's idea. It's a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to be sincere. So I'll talk about that. The benefits of implementing sincerity, I'll talk about that. The consequences of not having sincerity in our life. And the science of sincerity, and then some frequently asked questions about sincerity. I'll share some with you, and then we can also talk. So the word sincerity in Arabic is what? Ikhlas, right? Ikhlas. It comes from the past tense, right? Arabic always comes from 3 letters, past tense letters. The root verb, it's a past tense. It's akhlasa. This is 4 letters. It's a special, akhlasa. It's 4 letters. Alif, kha, lam, sad. So someone to be sincere is yukhlis. He is a sincere person. He is doing sincerity is yukhlis. And sincerity as a noun is ikhlas. Right? So ikhlas is coming from the verb akhlasa. And there's in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about shaitan. Is promising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he will misguide mankind, except إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمْ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. So a person who is sincere is called mukhlis. أخلص يخلص, and a person is mukhlis, right? But here in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that shaitan cannot, he knows that he cannot misguide al-mukhlas. It's not mukhlis, but mukhlas. What's the difference between mukhlis and mukhlas? Anybody knows? Okay. So al-mukhlas, we said that, right? We said is the person who is sincere. Al-mukhlas is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him sincere. It's not something that we did or he did. So these are the prophets, the righteous man, the companions of the Sahaba. Those are considered to be mukhlas, but mainly the scholars that talk about the prophets and the messengers, they are mukhlas. So therefore, a message coming from a prophet or a messenger is not diluted with insincerity. It's always sincere. They are always sincere in providing that knowledge and message to the people. And what is the surah? Surah Al-Ikhlas, right? We know about Surah Al-Ikhlas. So I'm sorry? قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Very good. Jazakallahu khairan. That is Surah Al-Ikhlas. A lot of people don't know that. But there is a surah called Sincerity, the surah of Sincerity. And it's the third to last from the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ in a hadith, he said that surah is equivocal of the third of the Quran. So therefore, sincerity is quite serious. And the surah goes around and focuses on what? Tawheed. Tawheed, absolutely. So therefore, there's a relationship between ikhlas and tawheed. Very strong relationship, that is. So then, let's talk about the definition of sincerity now. Sincerity is to make the intention and direction in worship to Allah alone. Another definition. These are the scholars' definitions. I'm reading it and then we can discuss it inshallah. Sincerity is to have one's actions in the open the same way as if it is not in the open. So what is revealed to people is you're the same way whether you're in front of people or you're alone. Other scholars define sincerity as it is not to ask for anyone to witness your action except Allah alone, and that there is no one will reward you except Allah alone. So let's talk about the first one. Examples for the first one. Sincerity to make intentions to and the direction in worshipping Allah alone. When we do zakat, when we pray, right? So these are the commanded worships from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But fasting, can you tell if somebody is fasting? I mean, you can tell if somebody is faking it and he just wants the attention and the recognition from people that he's doing the salah. He would go to the salah and he would pray and leave. He doesn't even, maybe didn't do anything in the salah. As a matter of fact, there was one guy, he went to the salah in a Jemaah. This is a story from the United States. True story. And the Imam made a mistake. He prayed 3 rak'ah. This man, in the salah, he said, Subhanallah. On the third rak'ah, the Imam made salam and finished. There was like about a line, about maybe 15, 20 people in the salah. It was like dhuhr or asr salah. And the Imam said, why did you say subhanallah? He said, you prayed 3 rak'ah. And the Imam asked everybody, he said, did I? And everybody said, no, you prayed 4 rak'ah. He said, no. This man insisted that this Imam made a mistake and he prayed 3 rak'ah only. And everybody was puzzled. I mean, everybody lost counting and lost focus except for this man. He was focused in the salah. And they went back and forth for a few times, and then finally the Imam said, so how can you be so sure? We are all in agreement that I prayed 4 rak'ah. He said, I have 4 stores. I have 4 businesses. In the first rak'ah, I calculated how much money I made in the first store. And in the second rak'ah, I did the second store and the third store. I did not get to the fourth store. I'm very sure you didn't do the... And everybody was puzzled with that. So even though he is performing the salah, you don't know where his intention is. And the same thing with like fasting. Fasting is, some people might say, I'm fasting in front of you, but they would go behind you and do not fast. So sincerity in the worship is a bit tricky. You're dealing with yourself, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can say so and so sincere and so on. Another person, this is a joke, it's not, I don't think it's a real story, but one person was making the salah and he was in complete khushu', and he was focusing, and you can see the humbleness, and it's like he's exaggerating a little bit. And some people sitting in the masjid looking at him, they were whispering to each other, MashaAllah, this brother is making great khushu' in the salah. And he heard them and he said, I'm fasting too. So again, it can be tricky on how people can understand or perceive. So sincerity is really in the heart when it comes down to worshipping. The second definition of the scholars is that one actions in the open is the same as if he's all by himself or herself. So that is about everything, that we do. It's not just about worshipping. It's a broader definition. Some might be on time, for example, in the salah, when they are, when they come to the masjid. But when they travel and they're alone, they wait, or maybe they skip the salah and they don't pay attention. If they had guests over, it's like, oh yeah, let's pray on time. But then when they're alone, they don't pray on time. So it's really, you need to be consistent. So that's another sign of knowing that you are being sincere. So you're the same person, whether you are in front of people or not. However, some scholars, I don't want to give an example of someone committing a sin in secret. So it doesn't mean that he would go out openly and commit that sin. They don't do that. You understand what I'm saying? It's like somebody's, for example, is drinking alcohol. At his home, before he goes to sleep, he takes a cup of alcohol. So him being sincere or her being sincere doesn't mean that he needs now to go out in the open and drink alcohol. That's not the same. That's a sin that he needs or she needs to work on in secret, that she needs to or he needs to get rid of that sin. But sincerity is not an action, it's actually an intention. You guys see the difference, right? I hope so. Everybody sees the difference between the two. There's no doubt having that sin in secret is bad. There's no doubt about that. But we're talking about sincerity in how we do things that are good. Because some people do good things for the wrong intention. There is no sincerity there. But that's a bad action that we're talking about. A sin that is done in secret, we don't want to bring it in the open. So in Islam, we're supposed to keep that in secret and work on that sin to stop doing it. We need not to kid ourselves. I mean, everybody knows, anybody who's sinning, on his own when people are not looking, he knows it's not right. Otherwise, he would do it in the open. So therefore, he or she needs to work on that and get rid of that as a sin. But here we're talking about sincerity, and it's a bit different. Just wanted to highlight the difference there. Anybody has any comments about that, or what has been mentioned so far? As I said, I expect talking, so inshallah I'll try again next time. The third definition that I mentioned is sincerity is not to ask anyone's witness. Sometimes we say, we tell people, come here, you be my witness that I'm doing something like that. I'm sweeping the floors. You be my witness that I did that. You don't want that. Why do you need someone to witness you? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the witness above all of us. So if there's sincerity, you just do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't wait for someone to come and witness you did that. Unless it's something for work, you're supposed to have someone to document what you're doing. That's different. Unless it's a legal matter that you need to have a witness for a sale or something. You need to have witnesses for signing contracts and stuff like that. It's different. Marriage, you can't go marry a sister and then you don't have witnesses. Like, no, I don't want your witnesses because I'm sincere. No. There are rules sometimes about witnesses, right? So, but I'm talking about general actions that we do day to day, moment to moment, in our lives, is that we don't seek someone's witnessship of our action. So therefore, we only rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to witness it. And we also we rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward it. Because if we want someone to witness it, what are we expecting? A reward. It goes without saying, but it is one and the same pretty much. So therefore the summary is that we need to have our actions for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, none other than Him. Purify our actions from being witnessed from others. We don't need to have that. And purify our actions from any impurity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now this is the commandment of sincerity. There are many verses in the Quran. In Surah Al-Bayyinah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة وذلك دين القيمة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in Surah Al-Bayyinah 98 verse 5, but they should and they were commanded not but that they should worship Allah and worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here in Arabic, and that's why I don't usually use the English when it comes down to Arabic. I try to. So here it says لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ. This is not mukhlasina. So this is specifically mukhlisina, with sincerity. They are absolutely sincere in their worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they were ordered by me, by Allah, that to be sincere in their worship. And we all know also the verse of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Verily my salah, the prayer, my sacrifice and my living, as well as my dying, is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and alone. So everything we do, we live for Him, we pray for Him, we sacrifice for Him, we eat for Him. How can we eat for the sake of Allah? How can we eat and drink for the sake of Allah? I'm not going to talk until somebody talks. How can we drink and eat for the sake of Allah? We sit on the table, we put the nice nasi lima or whatever the case might be, and then We say Bismillah, Allahumma barik lana fima razaqtana wa qina adhab an-nar, Bismillah, and then we eat. How can we be sincere about our food that we're eating, that is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Eat the sunnah way, okay? That makes it sincere for you? If you acted in the sunnah way? Absolutely. We follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Absolutely. But that's the how. Okay? Okay? But that's the how. But I'm talking about intention. To have the right intention about sincerity. Remember, we talked about sincerity is the intention. One of it was intention. Very good, sisters. Jazakallah khair. We're eating that food, halal. It needs to be halal food. We all know that. And it helps us to worship Him. So we eat and drink to give us the strength to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Why is that important? Why do we want to just worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why can't I have the intention of eating and drinking to go to work? Okay? Yes. 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 But the non-Muslims do the same thing. Atheist does the same thing. Atheists eat much healthier than me, I can tell you that. I know a very healthy atheist that eats a lot healthier than me. Do they? They don't believe in Allah. I'm sorry? Yeah, they don't believe in Allah. So how can I say I'm sincere but he's not? I have ikhlas, because remember, ikhlas is to be towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the sister just answered, we're eating to give us the energy, the strength to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Exactly. I eat because, exactly. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, kulu wa shrabu. That's a commandment. Eat and drink. Halalan tayyiba. All the halal food. To give us that ability. So why we're focusing on worshipping? Why is ikhlas? Why is ikhlas about worshipping? Remember what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, why are we existing on the face of the earth? Why did He create the human being? To worship Allah. So we eat and drink to worship Allah. We go to work to make money so we can worship Allah. For zakat, for sadaqah, for helping the needy. All of what we do is all around one pillar, which is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Absolutely. It's a complete package with one direction, one focus. And again, it's about tawheed. One focus. Very good. Jazakumullah khair. Got you a little bit revived a little bit. So inshallah we can, I like these discussions. So inshallah we can continue with that. So therefore, Sayyidina Ibrahim said, my salah, my nusuk, nusuk is sacrifice. Mahyaya, everything in my life. Mahyaya, not hayati, not my life. Everything within my life. Everything that is helping me live, basically, what mahyaya means. Everything or every cause that it's impacting my existence, basically. All, as well as my death. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And there are many verses on that. So I will now now we come with a little matrix. I'm sorry that you guys are not able to see the slides. So now we're talking about us being sincere. Now we want to talk about the other end of this transaction. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to be sincere. What's the other end of the transaction? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it. Right? For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it. So that's the we do it. Sorry. Sorry about that. It says bell on it. I thought it was the power. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to become sincere. And therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there has to be conditions for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who would accept that sincerity, that action for sincerity. So there are conditions for the acceptance. What are these conditions? We know one of them. Actually there are two, just to make it easier for you. There are two conditions. One is sincerity. We did that. And sincerity, as we said, is to be pure intentions towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even when we put food for our children, we're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for them to grow and get healthy or get smart and get better grades. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know one brother was his wife asked him a question. He said, "Why do you love me?" And the brother started thinking about that. It's like, this is a true story. He told me that. He started to think about it. He said, "I love you for the sake of Allah." And she said, "No, really, really, why do you love me?" So the best of actions is when we do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As in, even when we love our spouse. Right? When we love our children, we love them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no such thing called unconditional love. That doesn't exist. Because we do also hate for the sake of Allah. We reject for the sake of Allah. Right? So it's nothing called unconditional love. That is a topic of its own. I'm not going to get into that. But just a quick thought on that. So therefore, there are two conditions for the action to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that in the Quran. So one thing is to be sincere towards Allah and none but Him. Number two, it needs to be correct. It needs to be correct. Right? So how can it be correct? Absolutely. Jazakallah khairan. It's according to the Quran and Sunnah. Right? It needs to be correct. Haqq and batil. Yes, absolutely. Jazakallah khairan. Yes. Haqq and batil. The truthfulness and the falsehood. Absolutely. So we need to follow the haqq. We need to follow the truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. So therefore that makes it correct. So how many people done things that are correct, but the intention is not for the sake of Allah? And how many people did the intention for the sake of Allah, but incorrect? For the second one is really the non-Muslims. They do things incorrectly.
When we do something we thought was correct, let's say we our spouse, and they had a different intention, thinking what we did is not correct. But what's sitting between us that was wrong? Shaitan is making it difficult for us.
Oh yeah. I'm going to talk about that. I'll give you a quick question, a quick answer on that. If it's something that I need to talk about it more, inshallah. Just remind me if I don't talk about it, because it's not a quick answer, to be honest. I just thought about it. It's true. It does happen. Yeah, absolutely. It's a very important topic, and I was going to mention more about it. So let me make sure to cover the sincerity, and then we'll talk about the second topic. That's within the second topic, inshallah. I'll get covering that. Therefore, the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, if we do it according to the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, whether it's from the Quran or the Sunnah, because the Quran came on the tongue of the Prophet ﷺ, then they would be correct. I don't know if you guys have lived or seen non-Muslims or interacted with the non-Muslims. They are very, very sincere about what they do in their worship. Very sincere. It's amazing. But they're doing it wrong. Because when I asked them why you're doing this, they said this is, how we worship. It's like, where did you get that from? No. This is always how my parents do it. Tradition. It's like, but how come? How do you know that your Lord wants you to do this? Like, we didn't know that. So there you go. So therefore, the acceptance. So now the action is intention and sincerity. Now the conditions for acceptance, we covered that. Because the verse about us loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the condition of love also the same thing. It can go in parallel to what we just mentioned. Excuse me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, O Muhammad, tell them, in kuntum tuhibbun Allah, if you truly believe Allah, fattabi'uni, follow me, Muhammad, follow me. Then what's the result? Yuhbibkum Allah. Allah will love you back. So then you see everybody. You talk to Muslims and tell them, what's your vision in life? What's your goal in life? I want to go to heaven. You go talk to a Christian. What's your goal in life? I want to go to heaven. You go to a Jew. You talk to him. It's like, what's your goal in life? I want to go to heaven. Well, some of them, they say this is heaven, but that's a different story. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Right? So it's just the condition is, if we truly love Allah and we want to be with Him in heaven, then what are we following? Who is our guidance? Who is guiding us to heaven? Rasulullah alayhi salam. And if we are following the best of guidance, which is Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam and his message, then we are going to heaven. We're doing the right thing according to his guidance. But when someone says, I want to go to heaven, and they're following Buddha or their priest, obviously they think that they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they don't, because they follow their priests and rabbis and temple management or something. I don't know what do the Hindu or Buddhist ranking in the temple? They have a name? I forgot. I knew that I forgot it. So they follow these leaders in their culture, and then they tell them, this is for you. If you love God, you need to do that. But they're really not following what God told them. They're following what that man told them, without investigating that. So I have like maybe 20 slides on verses. Now let's talk about the benefits of having sincerity. So we talked about one already, which is acceptance. So if we have sincerity, you're halfway through. So if you're following the right guidance and you have sincerity, then you get the acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you're doing it correct and you don't have the sincerity, also, it's no good. And then also we mentioned, we talked about before, what else is beneficial from the sincerity, from having sincerity? We talked about someone witnessing for what? Someone witnessing our action to get rewards. Jazakallah khair. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witnessing our actions, then therefore our benefit is that we're getting the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, sincerity magnifies a small action. What does that mean? Small little rock, maybe on the way, You just move it out. If you're doing it for the sake of Allah, it's a gigantic action. It took almost no effort from you to do, but the reward of it is immense because it's sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, that's another benefit of having sincerity. So can you imagine if a great big action or project or program or something that you're running for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can imagine the rewards on that. Also forgiveness of sins. And here's something really beautiful about sincerity. Let's say that small rock that you saw, you couldn't move it because apparently it was stuck because of old cement that dried and you couldn't move it. You just couldn't move it. But you had that intention sincerely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to move it. You will get the reward. You still get the reward. Even though you were not able to. Isn't that beautiful? You can't get that deal with anybody. You can't go buy a car like whether you pay us or not, we're going to give you the car. You know, it doesn't work like that. Whether you become a member with us or not, we'll give you the reward of being a member. No, that never works except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one who gives us things just because we are sincere with Him and we're doing it for His sake. If we have that sincerity, whether we do the action or not, we still get the reward. So therefore, with sincerity, something that is permissible, like food, drinks, spending time with children, that's permissible. If you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it becomes what? It becomes a worship. That's part of the package. That's part of the package. Even being playful with the wife, with the children, being playful around the house. If you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you see, that's the beauty of it. You still get the reward. Because you're not expecting their acceptance. Because if you're expecting their acceptance, you'll be upset. It's like, oh, I've done all this, I've gone through this, and I got, rambutan from just to have some family time, and you guys not have enough time for it. But if you did it for the sake of Allah, you'll be happy, you'll be satisfied, because your intention is to someone higher, to someone is exalted, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then you'll be happy with the outcome, because you're getting a clean slate, or you're getting a confirmed contract. If you're doing it for His sake, you will be rewarded. So you're not expecting any confirmation or acceptance from the people you're doing it for. Also, having sincerity, it protects us from shaitan. It protects us from showing off, or some people obsessed with showing off, and self-desires. Or I should say, falling into self-desire, or desire of self, or self-desires, as well as the fitna of desire. I mean, some in the middle, in the whatchamacallit, in the West generally, they focus on desire as a drive to feed people to do and to move on and to move up the ladder and jump through hoops or whatever the case, whatever they call it. They focus on desire. They say you need to have that desire, that burning desire inside. Well, if your burning desire is not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're missing the boat. If our burning desire is not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are missing the boat. There's nothing wrong to have a burning desire inside, but it needs to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, on our part, we do the correct things with the right intentions, and then the outcome of that is acceptance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and rewards. That's really simply summarized. we do actions with the correct actions with the correct intentions, then we get the acceptance and the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, another benefit of sincerity is increasing wealth and removing hardship, and also removal of calamities, because your contract is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will return that sincere action with ease in this life. And I have dalil from Quran and Sunnah about each one I just talked to you about. Okay, so it's 12:19. Okay. So removal of calamities, and I want to just touch on that a little bit. There is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a long hadith. It's a story of 3 men got stuck in a cave. You guys know that hadith? I'm trying to find it so I make sure that I don't miss any points that are important in it. 3 men walking. This is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Abdullah ibn Umar is the narrator of the hadith. So this is a sincerity. This is an example of how sincerity removes hardship or difficulties. 3 men walking, and it started to rain. So they went to a cave to avoid the rain, to keep dry. And then from the rain there was landslide, and a big rock boulder fell and closed the cave on them, and they were not able to get out. So then they started telling each other, make dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the best of actions that you've done before. So one made dua. He said, oh Allah, when I have 2 old men, two old parents. It's in Arabic shaykhan, kabiran. It's actually his parents, his mom and dad. And I used to. This is in his dua. He said, "Oh Allah, I have 2 old parents, and I used to go out and to take care of the goats, and I milk the goats for them. And I bring the goat's milk for my parents to drink first, and then my children, and my wife, and then my wife, and that is my night." So he's making that dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what I do. And one day I came after I milked the goats, came with the goat milk to give my parents, but they were asleep. He waited. He didn't go to his children or his wife to give him the milk. He waited. He waited until his parents woke up. Then they drank, and then he gave his children and wife. And he said, "Oh Allah, I did that for your sake. Not because I love my parents, I respect them. No, he did it for his sake, for Allah's sake." Why did he wait? Because he hated to wake them up. He didn't want to wake them up. He wanted them to be rested. So he did that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though his children were hungry and starving and crying for the milk, he waited until his parents woke up on their own. Oh Allah, if I did that purely and sincerely towards you, oh Allah, get us out of this cave. So that was the dua he did. And then a portion of that boulder, that rock, was broken off and cleared. So they started to see part of the outside from the cave. And then the second man did the same thing. He talked about his action that he did, and He said, "Oh Allah, you know that I love a woman from my cousins more than any man loved a woman ever before. And she said that you will not." So he had his cousin in a room, only her and him in a room, and he wanted to get his way with her. And she said, "You will not get your way with me until you get 100 dinars for that." So then he went out and carried and did work very hard to get that 100 dinars. And then he got her again in that room, and he tried to get his way away from because she did that as something that is difficult, that he couldn't get the 100 dinars. But he worked really hard to get 100 dinars. 100 dinars is like golden. I don't know. It's about 100,000 ringgit, probably $100,000 about. Okay, maybe more. So she thought that was something impossible to do. So he went and worked hard, and he got that. That's how much he loved that woman. So he wanted to get away with her, to get what he wanted from her. And then he had her in a room, and he gave her the money. And she said, "Ittaqillah, fear Allah." She said that maybe would make him go away from me and not rape me, you know. So she did that. And then and she said, "You cannot have intercourse with me without the correct way, you know, by marriage and in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all that." So he said, when she said that, I stood up and I walked away from her. "And if I did that for your sake, oh Allah, remove this rock from us." And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed this another part of the rock. That was a little bit, so the opening now was a bit bigger, but it's not big enough for them to go out. And then the third man came. "Oh Allah, you know that I employed a person with a portion of a harvest. And that man refused to take that reward, that salary, if you want to call it. So he said that the person, he is saying that I intended to give it to him, regardless. Therefore I took the harvest and I planted it for him. And from the plantation, and the money that he got from the plantation, he bought cows. And he took care of the cows. And then that man came after a long time. He said, "Give me my harvest. I need that. Give me my salary that I refused to take before. Give it to me now." He didn't say, "Oh no, it's too late now. Don't have anything." He didn't say that. Even though he took his harvest, he planted it, and the plantation, or the output, or that he sold it, and when the money, he went and bought cows and took care of the cows. Then the man came to him, asked him for his money, and he said, "Go take those cows. These are for you. This is your money. This is from your harvest." I said, "Are you making fun of me?" He said, "No. This is all for you." It was a big herd of cows that he had, just from a small seeds from a harvest. So he said, "Oh Allah, if this action was sincere towards you, oh Allah, then remove the hardship from us." And then another portion of the rock came out, and then they were able to exit. So this is a hadith that tells us about how sincerity in actions, regardless of how small or how serious it is, it comes to benefit us in hardship. There's no doubt about that. Any questions or comments about that? Consequences of not having sincerity. So if we doing actions that are not for the sake of Allah, then that is considered to be shirk, right? If we are accompanying someone else in our worship, in our, are we doing it for the sake of Allah? No, we're accompanying something with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's considered shirk. I mean, that's just the matter of the fact. Therefore, if there is shirk, then do we enter heaven? Do we get rewards? No. Do we have any rewards to enter heaven? No. So then the consequence of not having sincerity is not entering heaven. And if you don't enter heaven, where do you go? If I don't enter heaven, where do I go? Hell. It's like either here or here. You can't have a camp in the middle. It's not allowed. And therefore, our actions will be rejected. If our actions are rejected, then no heaven. And if the actions are rejected, we lose the reward, and therefore no heaven, and there we only left with hell. So all of these are from the hadith and the Quran. They're supported by I'll just mention this hadith. It's a bit long, not as long as the one before it, but it also tells us about the sincerity. And if no sincerity, then the outcome is hellfire. The first person, this is a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, said that I heard the Prophet ﷺ say, the first person, or amongst the nations of the people, he will be judged on the day of judgment is, anybody knows? The first person that will be judged in the day of judgment. Shaheed. I think you said Shaheed, right? I thought you remember you said Shaheed. It's actually a man who committed Shahada for the sake of Allah. He killed himself, or he went to fight for the sake of Allah, and he was killed as a shaheed for the sake of Allah. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls upon him, and he comes. And he said, and he says to Allah, I fought for your sake until I was a martyr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you are a liar. You did it for people to say you are a shaheed, you are a martyr. And he puts him in hellfire. The second man, just to show you how important this topic is, it's really a make it or break it deal. This ikhlas thing, it's either make it or break it. No middle grounds here. Another man who learned and taught Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I gave you that knowledge. What did you do with it? He said, oh Allah, I learned it and I taught it and I read it. Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling me they gave you this ability to read and to memorize. He said, oh Allah, I learned the Quran and I learned how to read it and I taught others how to read it and I memorized it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you are lying. You did it for people to say he is a scholar. He's a sheikh. You are a sheikh. That's why you did it. And they did say that. Actually, there's the same thing also mentioned about the shaheed. You did it for people to say you are a martyr. And they did say that. And then they go down. So you got the reward. People recognize that you're a shaheed. Now this person, people recognize that you're a sheikh. And therefore, you go to hell. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala threw him, ordered to be thrown in hell. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this man abundance of money, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked the man, what did you do with all the money I gave you? He said, oh Allah, I've never left any chance for me to donate for your sake. I did it. Every chance I got to donate for your sake, I did it. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, you lie. You are lying. He did it so people said that he is generous, that you are generous. And people did say that you are generous, and then you go to hellfire. So this is a simple hadith, tells us a story of three men that are doing supposedly the most honorable actions: shahada, Quran, sadaqah. But it was not accepted because it was not sincere towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people do projects and do things to help the ummah and do good things. But if sincerity is not there, it will be weightless on the Day of Judgment. Simple as that. Very simple. So therefore for us, so now we're following what the scholars of Islam did about sincerity and how they dealt with sincerity, and then we follow their steps, right? Same thing with the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ. No one amongst them said about themselves that they are sincere. And how many times we hear, Wallahi brother, I'm very sincere with you. I'm really very sincere with you. Sister, I'm really sincere. I'm giving you a sincere advice. We say that a lot. I don't know. It's not something that our scholars did. They never describe themselves as sincere. They don't. So what do we do at when we look for a job? When we are interviewed for a job, what do we do? We do what? Exactly. Is that bad? I mean, can you be in an interview, being interviewed for a job, and then you say, I'll try, inshallah, do my best, but they're asking you specific questions, what do you do? So we take the example of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. What did he do? He put himself forward to be a prime minister of Egypt. Did he say his qualifications? Sure did, and that's what got him the job. He went to the king and told him, I am knowledgeable and sincere and keeper. I mean, I'm a keeper. I'm a good hafidun alim. I'm a person who is trustworthy and knowledgeable. So I'm qualified for the job, and he got the job. So therefore, sincerity is different than saying your qualification. When you state your qualification to brag, again, it's the intention. If you're stating your qualification with sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are recognizing the qualifications that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you to make a living, to help your family, to make it easy for you to worship Him. See, it's all about worship. So it's all about how we think what we do. We can't go to a qualification and you're like a nuclear scientist or something, and it's like, oh, inshallah, I will try, inshallah. Tell me, can you do this? Yeah, inshallah. We'll see, inshallah. We'll see. Like, brother, can you do this? I need to know. Are you qualified for this? Yeah, inshallah. Allah will make it easy, inshallah. It's like, yes, I understand that, but what's your so difference, right? So we understand that there's a difference between stating our qualifications versus bragging and with no purpose, really. Okay, hiding good actions, specifically hiding good actions from public eye. So that's another thing that we need to do. That's part of the etiquette towards sincerity. So from public eye as well as relatives. I mean, for married people, it's really interesting that a man tries to impress his wife and the wife tries to impress her husband, and it happens, right? It's really a lot of people do that, and we need to be careful. You make sadaqah, no need to tell your parent, your spouse about it. You make sadaqah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You didn't need just to go to my house like, Alhamdulillah, today I donated 5,000 ringgit for so it's like, oh, that's wonderful, thanks, jazakallah khairan, I'll make you your best meal tonight, inshallah. So it's that very reward. So why you're telling her that? The reward will come as a natural outcome for sharing these kind of information for people that you love and people that care for you. So therefore, hiding these good actions from the relatives, from the public eye, also to always be conscious of the danger of being fake, faking things that we're not sincere. We say just for the sake of whatever that we are intending to, and there's no sincerity in it, being fake or showing off, hypocrisy. We need to be always conscious about that. Yes, true. Yes. To promote their qualifications, to promote the... Yes. So the purpose of the project is global, and then in the process people tend to promote themselves. Yes. Yes. To present the funds. Yeah. Yeah, the fundraising part of it, and giving the checks in public and all that. Good point. I always had a problem with fundraising when they start with $1 million. Who wants to donate $1 million? And I can't afford $1 million. I have $100. Can I spend $100? And once I did it, because why? It's really, I'll answer to your question, but you just reminded me of an incident about fundraising. The first people who do the action get their reward and the reward of those who came after them. When they limit the fundraise with high numbers at the beginning, it's really preventing the little people who hasten to make the good deeds. So they're preventing them. And once I did, it's like, brother, I'm giving you this much money. It's like, no, we're not there yet. We'll get to that level soon. Now we're starting with the 20,000. I said, brother, that's all I can afford. I'm not going to wait until the 20,000. I want to put my money forward. And they didn't like that. But that's really, it's not part of the organization. Anybody wants to donate, they need to do it. And they need to allow for people to do it secretly. Now for putting the big checks and all that, it really depends on the situation and the intention of the person who's holding that check. Because there can be something good comes out of that, encouraging people, showing people where that money is going, to remove assumptions or bad reputation. It can be beneficial, but it really comes down to what's deep in the heart. Exactly. So therefore, there's no doubt it's best to do it exactly in secret, in behind doors. Nobody knows about it. And one question, I'll talk about that, but I'll just mention it because of that. Some people ask, is it okay to lie if somebody wants to donate, for example, to build a masjid? These things happen a lot. especially in the West. And they go for fundraising. One man can say, you know what, the whole masjid cost is on me. But he can do that in secret. Right? And then rumor goes out. And then someone comes and asks that person, did you really pay for that fund of the masjid? You paid it totally. So the question was, can I lie and say no? The answer is no. You cannot lie. You can use tawriya. Tawriya is use a language that has two meanings. A famous understanding and a hidden understanding that you have. For example, in that case, if somebody came to him and asked him, did you spend full, did you pay for the full cost of the build of that masjid? He can say, I was only passing the money from a person I know, or from a Muslim. This is all Muslim money and I'm passing it on. Which is true. I mean, it's his money, the Muslim money. His money is from a Muslim and he's passing it on. So he can say that without lying. So lying is not acceptable, but you can use tawriya. So in that example, they can use different ways to promote and show that their money is going to this and to good things and so forth, especially if they're a government or a big corporate. And there's also the things that now we deal with is like the tax refunds and the tax write-offs because of the whatchamacallit, the donations and all. There is no such thing called white lie. A lie is a lie, and there's no colors in lies. There's no color. It's really lie is a lie. Absolutely. Very good point, brother. Jazakallah khairan. So here are some signs that helps us understand or helps us really gauge our sincerity. Disliking fame. That's one thing. If you dislike fame, then that's a good thing. That's a good sign. Disliking praise. If you don't like people to praise you. Now, what would be now if somebody comes and if people start to praise you? What do? It's like, just be quiet. You don't tell them that. It's like, no, I don't like that. Sit down. I don't like. No, don't say that either. If people praise you and you're not asking for it, you take that as a good sign. You say, Alhamdulillah. You recognize that it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, the difference is wanting to be praised as opposed to being praised by people's recognition of the good things you've done. You just say, Alhamdulillah, recognize it, and that's a good sign for you. You take that as a good sign. When you have enthusiasm for working for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of all the politics that sometimes we deal with in Islamic organizations, specifically our Islamic organizations. And subhanAllah, shaitan left all the other organizations and he's sitting in the middle of the Islamic organizations, and you see the most hardship sometimes happens during or through the Islamic organization. So if you have that enthusiasm and you're not distracted by all this nonsense that happens around you or that you see that might happen, then that's another sign of sincerity. Taking initiatives, seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's another sign. Patience and endurance and not complaining, it's very important. That's another sign of sincerity. You are keen to hide your actions, the good actions. We're talking about keen to hide the good actions. You must hide the bad actions until you get rid of it. You need to seek help. We all need to seek help to get rid of the bad actions, the sins that we do. We must keep it in secret. However, the good actions we need to strive and make sure that are hidden. So does that mean we need to hide all good actions? So what is the guideline here? Sincerity. But how do we know this action must be in the open and that action better be in hiding or in secret, and that action must be in secret? Can we do Umrah in secret? Right, but that's for sincerity, right? To be sincere and not to lie about it. But when we do an action, whether it is in the open or in secret, how do we know that? What's our guidance or the reference point? Can you speak up, please? Sadaqah, yes. Hmm. Jazakallah khairan. Jazakallah khairan. So to summarize it, it's really the Quran and the Sunnah. That's the guideline. That's the filter that we need to put it through. If the Quran and Sunnah tells us it needs to be done public, we do it in public. Can we do Umrah in secret? No. Can we do Hajj in secret? So I'm going to go do Hajj by myself today. I'm not. This year I'm doing it on my own. I'm going to go to Mina by myself, throw my Jamarat. I don't want to tell anybody. You'll be arrested. If you're the only person there, you'll be arrested. Believe me, Allahu A'lam, but I speculate. So there's no Hajj by yourself. There's no Umrah by yourself. Zakah, I don't know if anybody went to United Arab Emirates. I really like that. In zakah, what they do, they bring the rice, the grains, whatever. When they go to Salat, to Eid, Salatul Eid, those who need to pay zakah, they bring their grains and they put it at the door of the masjid, outside the masjid. And those who need it, on the way out, they pick it up and go. So nobody knows who needs it, and just anybody can take it. So it was really, really like an automatic system. They leave it outside, but that was like, I don't know, 14 years ago or something like that. Maybe now it's different. Which part? It's on them. It's on them. Yeah, I don't know what's in their heart. But it's usually the needy, they know that they, on the way out, they'll get their portion. They get a bag. You see, I mean, I haven't seen a person like overloading himself with 10 bags. And they can, because it's like 1 kg. But they take one bag and they just go home. Which is really, really, I was just sat there and just watched the whole process. It was really impressive. So, so therefore, zakah can also be in the open. Sadaqah, like the sister said, you need to be. It's best to be in secret, but sometimes you need to do it if you believe that by openly saying so, you open the door for others to follow you. Right? Because if you have a fundraise and nobody's raising their hands, some people who get hesitant, like, oh, nobody's paying, nobody's donating here. Maybe I shouldn't donate either. Maybe this is a bad cause. So it gives a bad reputation. You're in a fundraise, you're expected to raise your hand. You just raise your hand, or you just write papers, and they will announce. Now, so far we have 10,000, 20,000, we're reaching the goal. They announce it. That's okay. And if there's a way to write it and submit your donations, and they need to announce it, that's also okay. But you're doing it in secret, you're putting your name in secret, it passes through the system. Can someone do jihad by themselves in secret? Depends who you ask, right? No, jihad is done, it's announced by the ruler. It's not something that I do in secret on my own. It's not something that it's done because I want to do it. I want to do it in secret today. I want to start doing jihad worship. No, it doesn't work like that. What else? We talked about mainly these are some of the examples. So the bottom line is that the filter is whether we decided in the open or not in the open. If it was done at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions and those who followed them, if it was done openly, then we do it openly. If it was done in secret, we do it in secret, and therefore. Another sign of sincerity, which is really, really important, is the mastery of action while it is in secret. You know, like the quick example I can think of is like sweeping the floors and you put it under the rug, as opposed to sweeping the floors, wiping it with wet cloth and then drying it with a dry cloth and taking all the dirt and putting it away so it doesn't come back to the same place again. That's mastery of that action. And it's very, very important. So if you have that mastery of the action in secret, that's another sign of sincerity. So I need to move. So here is a question, a common question. Can I leave an action? Can I leave an action? I don't do an action, fearing hypocrisy or fearing showing off. That is the question. What is the answer? The answer is no. That's a good answer. Why? Absolutely. Jazakallah khairan. So if your intention is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're sincere about that, you don't care how people perceive you. You don't care if that's going to come across as hypocrisy or not. As long as you are clear inside with your intentions towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that path is clear and connected, then shaitan can whisper like, oh, you're doing this for the sake of so and so. And you're like, no, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. You just go ahead and do it. So as a matter of fact, leaving it for other people, that's insincerity of itself. Because you're not leaving it for the sake of Allah. So you're leaving it for someone else's sake. What they might believe, what many might think. So you're not leaving it for the sake of Allah. And that by itself is insincere. Got it? Is it clear? Make sense? Waswas, yeah, absolutely. There's like a little pop here comes up with whispering. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And a common question I asked earlier, can I lie to protect myself from hypocrisy? Now there are things that perceived or misunderstood of being insincere, or people perceive it as a sign of insincerity on their part. When you are thanked or praised, I've talked about that. Or when you gain fame for something that you have knowledge and you became famous because of that. That's a good sign, as long as you're not asking for it. Getting other people's recognition, of your competency, or your ability, or your knowledge, or whatever it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you, as long as you're not seeking it, then it's not insincerity. How about asking someone's testimony? You have a service that you're doing. You're a dentist, for example, and you want a testimony from your customer that they were happy with the service. You give different types of service. You have a restaurant. You want a feedback and a testimony for people to write, and you want to post it in your Facebook or on your line or in your page online. You want to post that. Is that insincerity? Is that insincerity? What do you guys think? Is that allowed? Is that okay to do? Does that mix with sincerity, being sincere? You provide cleaning carpets for masjids. You want the management of this masjid to give a testimony that your service was excellent. Is that a good thing? Is that allowed? Does that mix the sincerity of what you do? Okay. So what would be a good thing to do that? Very good. Yeah. So you're good at something. You have the qualification to do a really good job for a masjid, for anything. And you want people to know that ability by using someone else's experience. Actual, factual experience. So that is only to show others that you're capable of doing that service, that specific service. You're not asking it to brag. Absolutely. Jazakallah khairan. So these are the things that sometimes people fall into misunderstanding what some of the actions we do. It actually makes sense. Also, clean clothes, perfume, nice shoes, nice car. All that, you can have nice things if you can afford it, but don't take a loan and so you can have a nice watch and a nice car. I mean, that's something disliked. But having these nice clothes and it doesn't show insincerity. It doesn't show that you're showing off in a way. But also, as long as it's within the guidance of the Quran and the Sunnah. Sometimes we see someone is making ibadah, worship, whether it's sadaqah, whether it's qiyam, we get motivated. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna make qiyam. You see my dad, you see your dad, you see our child making qiyam. It's like I get motivated. It's like, mashallah, this is gonna make you motivated. Is that insincerity? It's not. You're just getting motivated. Has nothing to do with sincerity. You're sincere towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He just got you motivated to do the action. So He gets the reward, right? That's the beauty of it. But you are doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not doing it because of Him, because He maybe not even know that you are doing it. Just being motivated by others. Some people get motivated is like, oh no, you know what? That's hypocrisy. And because I saw him, I'm going to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. No, do it. You got motivated. That's great. It's good for you and it's good for the person that you saw. So we don't need to mix between the two. And also, as I mentioned earlier, hiding your sins is not insincerity. Hiding our sins is really something we must do, right? We don't go brag about it. If you mix with the non-Muslims, they actually do that on Monday morning or Monday lunch time. They talk about what they did on the weekend, and they brag about it. It's really, really disgusting sometimes, but that's their life. They just brag about it. They don't know they don't know any better. But if somebody does a sin, you don't go tell people about it. You don't go update your status on Facebook. And same thing if you do a good worship, a good action. You make qiyam, you don't go update your status. I'm doing qiyam right now. Or take a selfie while you're doing qiyam. I've seen people taking selfies around the Kaaba. It was very distracting. I just came from Umrah. It was very, very distracting, subhanAllah. I was making dua, and we were like in the middle of the tawaf. And some brother, he looked like either from England or from Canada or something. And he was making a selfie, and he was in the way, and I was like, I didn't say anything. And the guy in front of me told him, Akhi, you don't do that. It's very, he said it in Arabic. He said, this is very distracting. And he looks like, so I translated. I said, he's telling you that this is very distracting. We are making worship here. Like, oh, okay. And then he put the phone away. May Allah reward him, Jazakallah khair. He responded to the feedback. But it's very distracting sometimes. I mean, he might already finish the worship. He's just doing that for the memory or something. But it's very distracting for those who are doing the worships. Now the second topic is what? Who can guess what the second topic is? Jemaah. Unity. Unity in Islam. The concept or the aspects of unity in Islam is abundance. One Lord. Unity is one. One Allah. One Lord. One book. One prophet. One Qibla. One religion. Can be a Muslim and having two religions. It's one Islam, right? And one ummah. One ummah. So the concept or the idea of one, unity is in Islam. And how old is Islam? 1400. Anybody wants to raise that? 1434 and few months. I agree. I disagree to that. I think it's more than 10,000 years. I think it's more than 1,000,000 years. I think it's more than 1,000,000 years. Absolutely. Jazakallah khairan. Islam is from the beginning of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And at that time it was unity until Cable or Qabil decided to have unity with Shaitan. Why? Because Shaitan came with the jealousy. He split Qabil from the Ummah. The Ummah was very small. He could have just moved away and got himself in. The earth was empty. I mean, there was only Adam and his children, alayhi salam, and his children and his wife. So Qabil, he could have moved from where they were to a different part of the world. They never had to deal with that. But he chose to kill his brother. That's what happens when we disunite. We go against each other as humans. So therefore the message was one. From the time of Sayyidina Adam until now, it's one. It's the same message. Whether they call themselves Jews, Christian, or whatever. It came from the same message. And then they differed. And they differed from the main message. And then there was disunity. So the concept of unity is old. It's very old. It's as old as our existence on earth, for the matter of fact. And all creations were created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's a unity of the creation. The unity of the creation because they were created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With unity comes harmony, because the whole universe is in unity. If the universe is not in unity, there's no harmony. The sun will spin on its own, and the moon will go on its own, and then there'll be chaos in the universe. And the fact that the universe is running in a unified matter shows a very effective and life system of unity for us. And then when there was disunity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the prophets to give the glad tidings who are united, and then warn those who differ. And today, where is our ummah? It's the split nation of Islam, not the united nation of Islam. We have the united Europe, or European Union. We have United States. What else? United Kingdom. Yeah, that's very close to Malaysia. We used to have the Soviet Union. And we have the United Nations. But then we have the United Arab Emirates. But that's not an Islamic nation. I can disagree to anybody who tells me it's an Islamic nation. But they're Muslims, there's no doubt about that. But the ruling is not an Islamic ruling. So it's not a United Islamic Emirates. It's a United Arab Emirates. It's based on ethnicity or blood. So therefore the concept of unity is old, and we are Muslims. We're following the same guidance as ever existed, but we don't have the unity. Islam encourages unity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Be and hold steadfastness and be together to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not be divided amongst yourselves or among yourselves. So that's a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be united, to be a part of the Jemaah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us not to have divisions within ourselves. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا. So if we have divisions, then what's the outcome? If we have disputes, we have divisions, what's the outcome? When you have a strong wind, a typhoon or strong wind coming, how do you, when you put things to divide that wind to go different places, what happens to the wind? I'm sorry? The wind will cause chaos, but the wind is strong, is coming this way, and I put divider to make it go that way, and another divider to go up, and then it, right, exactly. It'll be weak. It'll weaken the wind, the strength of the wind, and the pressure that is causing. It'll be divided, and then it'll be dispersed. It'll be very weak. And that's what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says. You lose your courage, you lose your strength with this unity, not following, not being part of the Jemaah. And Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So this is something new, that we are divided. We just found out about this. The fact that Muslim Ummah is divided. How many divisions are there? 73. How do we know that? I'm sorry? It's a hadith. It's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He said the nations before you, they split 172, and this Ummah will split on 73. How many are of the 73? How many will go to heaven? 1. What's the ratio? This is 99%. 98.6% will go to hell. Now, this is not people. This is the group. 98.6% of these groups will go to hell. That's very dangerous. I mean, if you go to someone in a partnership, tell them, listen, I have this idea, for us to be profitable and beneficial is 50-50. It's like, no, thank you. I'm not going to be part of that deal. Because 50% is a big risk. Now we're talking about the risk of 98.6, about 99% risk of losing heaven. So do we want to take this risk lightly? Or do we want to take this risk seriously? It's a serious matter. It's a very serious matter. It's a very serious matter. So we talked about ikhlas, and now we're talking about unity. What's the connection? Surah Al-Ikhlas talks about what? Tawheed. Unity talks about what? Tawheed. So ikhlas talks about Tawheed in our actions, in everything we do. Unity is also talking about Tawheed, following that group that follows the Tawheed, the message, the only message, and the one message that was sent by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So unity has to be based on sincerity. And sincerity needs to be for unity. I'm sincere to do something, but in my focus, in my vision, I want to be having a united ummah at the end of the day. I want to be part of that group that is going to be successful. That 1% of all the action, all the divisions, I want to be one with that 1% of those divisions. So therefore, I need to take this matter very seriously. So therefore, the majority of the people, of the Muslims, they follow the Sunnah, alhamdulillah. So those who follow the sects, or the divisions of Islam, in number they are much smaller than the majority of the Sunnah. Don't take that for granted. We must not take this for granted. The challenge in front of us is immense. It's huge. And if we don't take this seriously, we might lose focus. And for us to prevent ourselves and children not to lose focus, we always must have this focus, to be part of this united ummah of Islam. Whether we have a a representation in the parliament or in a government or whatever the case, or United Nations, as a Muslim ummah, I don't care. We all need to be part of this ummah. How do we define this ummah? It's the ummah that follows the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger alayhi salam. There are many divisions. They say we are Ahlul Sunnah wal Jemaah, and they have the atrocity and they have the nerve to call themselves Ahlul Sunnah wal Jemaah, but they are far, far away from being Ahlul Sunnah wal Jemaah. Far away from that. Yes, I'm not a sheikh. I'm your brother. Yes, brother. Yes, brother. Out of the
fall that we are going on.
Yes.
People are not as we go to the other Jemaah, and what we are following them based on what we thought was correct. Where we are learning from here and learning out there, where we are following something that we are not clear from being awam. So where we draw that line, Jemaah, but a person, or an imam, they don't know actually that he's truthful or not.
If he's truthful in the information that he's giving you, yeah.
So because like you say, they all claim they will Sunnah. So we are following what he's bringing us, because the truth, the method and what we are following,
Yeah.
probably is very minute.
Yeah.
So where do we draw that?
Why do you need to draw the line?
Because we need to know, we have to still go to the Jemaah with all the other people from outside.
Oh, how do you know that they're not part of the group? Is that what your question is? How do you know? How do you to categorize? Okay. There are many different ways to understand their position from the Jemaah. I think that's what you're trying to say. If they belong to the Jemaah, or you draw the line, how to keep yourself away from the. How do you find out if they're not part of the Jemaah? They're misguided or something.
Some of them are
It's in what they're saying. If what they're saying is something new that you didn't learn from your trusted teacher,
but they're bringing you in forward. They're bringing you towards the deen which you thought was correct. Because wherever we learn here, we learn outside the
so okay, I'm not sure I understand your question. Okay, so what you learn here is different from what you learned before, and then?
So we are going back to the right intention.
Oh, your current status. Then what you've known before, you're not accounted for because you were.
We are exposed to those people.
Yes, of course. But now you know better.
We have to be with the Jemaah then.
Yeah. Then you give nasiha. They don't accept it. So what's the guideline in terms of correcting a mistake? There are three things the Prophet ﷺ told us. You change it with your hand, and then your tongue. If you cannot with your hand, you do it with your tongue. If you cannot with your tongue, you do it with your heart. You have to try. Yeah.
We do not separate ourselves.
Of course not. Of course not. Because they also have rights on us. Remember, we were there. And alhamdulillah, we are here. Now that we are here, it's like, oh no, thank you. I don't want to be part of you.
Why did they do something bid'ah and all that, and we are behind them following it?
Okay. So that comes with our maturity and our skills in dealing with people. Some people have it, some people don't. I've seen brothers from North Africa addressing the bid'ah thing. They were very harsh. And I've been here for 10 years, I learned the Malaysians are very sensitive people. They don't accept rejection or criticism. So if you don't know the culture, learn the culture first. You need to be sensitive. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam to give kind words to Fir'aun himself. So what about the Muslim brother and sister that are committing bid'ah? We need to be soft. You are selling the best thing ever existed on the face of the earth. This is Islam. You don't want to sell it cheap. You need to do your homework, how to be effective in giving the da'wah, in giving the nasiha. How we say, sometimes by doing it, people come and ask. I was in Penang and I used to make my tasbih and I leave. I don't stay like half an hour or 45 minutes to do their adhkar. And some brother, I did it consistently, I just did that. And sometimes I leave because I'm in a rush. And I have a brother who is a very good brother of mine. He's a friend of mine. I miss him a lot. He did roti jala. Roti jala, is it? Yeah, the hairy thing. It's beautiful, really tasty. So he does to do it early in the morning after Fajr, so he can get the customers, mainly students who go to school. So he has to get all that stuff ready so he leaves also early. So they criticized him in front of me. So I asked a question. I said, why should he stay? It's like, oh, but that's part of the sunnah. It's like, can you help me? I really don't understand. Can you help me find where did you learn that? They couldn't give me an answer. I said, okay, I can give you an answer. So I gave him the dalil from the Prophet ﷺ, and I gave him the examples of the Sahaba, and I said, that's what I know, and that's what I'm following. Please help me if you know something better than that.
That's what the majority is doing right now.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that we need to educate ourselves. We need to know the right knowledge. For us to reach out, okay, here is something that one of my scholars, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, he taught me this. When the Quran was revealed, what was the first command? Iqra. That's the surah, right? Then the second surah, when it was revealed, what was the command? The second surah. Ya ayyuhal muddathir. No, Ya ayyuhal muzammil. Ya ayyuhal muzammil. What? قم فأنذر. قم الليل إلا قليلا. Ya ayyuhal muddathir. Now the third surah. This is the first surah was revealed. This surah Iqra. Then surah al-Muzammil. Then surah al-Muddathir. This is according to the majority of the scholars the ruling or the order of the surahs that were revealed. Iqra. The second one said قم الليل, and the third one was قم فأنذر. Warn. So then we always focus on the warning and criticizing other people's work, other people's bid'ah, but we haven't done our part in reading and understanding the Quran and understanding the Sunnah and implementing it in our life. قم الليل إلا قليلا. We need to seek this energy from us, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to do extra worships without ourselves to. Why? We want to discipline our soul. We want to discipline ourselves to give us the strength and the presence for the da'wah, because da'wah is not easy. Being rejected when you know the truth is not easy. So can you imagine the Prophet ﷺ walking in the markets of Mecca, or yourself, you walk around, telling people about the Sunnah and what's the right thing, and your uncle is behind you saying, no, he's a liar. That's not an easy thing to go through. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared the Prophet ﷺ by telling him, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He put that discipline of worship. He established that relationship between his servants, the conveyors of that message. Right? In the sales terminology, they were trained well on themselves, and then they went out and practiced. And then قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ. See, the second one was, or the third one, the third قُمْ, the order قُمْ is what? قُمْ is stand up. Nobody asked me. So first one اقرأ means what? Read, knowledge. The second one is قُمْ الليل, means stand and make extra salah and at night. Qiyam, qum al-layla. Qum is stand up and do salah, extra salah. At that time the salah was at night. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the Prophet ﷺ and his companions to do prayers, establish the prayers in their lives. So after knowledge we implement it, we do the salah, we do extra salah in the night. Why? Because we need that. And then قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ, stand up and warn and make da'wah for others. So we need these two to qualify us for the third one. So therefore you want to help them, right? You're going to get rejection, but you need to do your part. You need to learn. You need to learn the deen. You need to do the right thing. Not only that, you need to know what sticks in their mind, how to get to them, how to help them listen to you, because some of them are not even listening to you. Because they see change, they see difference, like blocked. They don't accept change. A lot of people have that personality. And you need to work at your pace. You cannot overwhelm yourself because it'll be a burden on you. It depends how strong you are. So we need to be strategic in our da'wah and how to reach out to others. I hope I helped in the answer. I cannot really answer it because there is not one answer because it depends on the situation, depends on the person. Sometimes I sit in one of these kulliyas, and one kulliya was talking about, and he spoke a lot of Arabic, so I understood what he was saying. And then I asked him a question. He got offended by it. He didn't like it. I asked him, so can you please help me with the dalil on this comment that you mentioned? And he just gave me that look, and I knew that he knew what I was talking about, and he didn't like that. Yeah, it does happen. But for me, I can think, okay, that's good. He resonated with him. But at the same time, it was not effective. It backfired. He was repelled from it. So to me, it's like, I cannot use that methodology again. Because I want him to think, not be offended. So the next one I asked on the side, not open in front of people. So between him and I in the closed session, may Allah reward you, Jazakallah khairah. This is a wonderful topic. You praise the good things he did. We tend to focus on the negative, on the bid'ah. But there's so much good that they put in that lecture. Maybe one mistake here, 2 mistakes. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Please help me, Sheikh. You mentioned this. Where can I learn more about that? You just need to make him think. Because some of them, they just they're just passing it on. They don't think about it. They just take it and pass it on. But when you make them think, he might say, you know what, let me think. Let me check it and I'll get back to you. When he goes and check it, maybe he will find the right answer that you were looking for, that you already knew. But you're making him think. You're making him do the homework without being offended, without offending him. So it depends, Did I tell you about the story of the guy who's selling vinegar and the guy who's selling honey? I mentioned it. I'm not sure if I mentioned it here. So these two guys have shops in the market, side by side. One person is selling vinegar, and the other one is selling honey. And the lines are just endless with the guy who's selling vinegar. And the shop owner of the honey is puzzled. He's like, how could this happen? This guy is selling vinegar and people are buying vinegar like nothing else. And I have the sweetest product and nobody's buying from me. Day after day, and he had it. He went to the vinegar guy. He said, how come people are lining up to buy vinegar from you and nobody's lining up to buy honey from me? What is your secret? Tell me. I need to know. I must know. I have the best product here. So sometimes as a sunnah, people who follow the Jemaah, we have the honey, but people are not coming to us. They're going for the vinegar. So what was the secret? He told them, listen, here's the secret. I sell vinegar with a honey face. You sell honey with a vinegar face. That's what people see. That's what people see. So, I mean, think about it. Can you go to your son or a baby son, a baby, like an infant, like, I love you! He'll be crying for all day. But you're telling him I love him. You're telling him that you are loving him. But how you said it and how it's an art. It's a skill. It's not really an art. It's a skill. It's a process that you need to learn it. You need to learn it and you need to implement it, and that's how you can be effective. I need to close this. We're out of time already, subhanAllah. I have some thoughts to share with you. Causes of disunity. Following desire. Leaving room for doubts, allowing doubts to get in. Doubting the message of the Prophet ﷺ. That opens for disunity. I don't know if there is a book. This book is translated to English or to Malay. It's called Talbis Iblis, the deviation or the delusion of Iblis, of Shaitan. It's a very good book. Tells you about all the sects, how they diverted from Islam. Ignorance causes disunity. Tuning away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tuning away from Allah's law. from turning away from Allah's religion, Allah's as a focus, as an intention, and also Allah's law. Extremism is another cause for disunity. So I said first desire, and that's how Cable was split, because of that desire of jealousy. How come my brother and not me? That caused the first disunity in the nation of human being. Also disunity, not following the example of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, and instead following other people, non-Muslims and so forth. So what's the solution? So when we establish, before we get to the solution, when we establish the unity, it needs to be based on what? Based on what? The Quran and Sunnah. If it's not in the Quran, if it's not in the Sunnah, if the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, why do we take an opinion of Sayyidina Uthman, and for example the adhan of Jemaah, for the Jemaah, day of Jemaah, there are 2 adhans, and we say that's Sunnah, but the Prophet didn't do it. Qiyam, when we do Qiyam, it's in congregation, it's at the Jemaah. We do it in the masjid. The Prophet didn't do that. Sayyidina Umar ordered that. So what are we talking about? So why are we saying we follow Umar? Why are we saying that we need to follow Uthman, and that's part of the Sunnah? Because our Prophet ﷺ told us, follow me and the righteous khulafa after me. So we are following the Prophet ﷺ. See? So we need to know. We need to know. And knowing these little things, to see the connection, how, why, by doing this is part of the Sunnah. So therefore, the foundation, it needs to be, or the filter needs to be Sunnah, Quran and the Sunnah. So the method to establish the unity. Number 1, establishing beneficial knowledge in our lives. Going after, learning, gaining, whatever you want to call it. We need to gain that beneficial knowledge. What's the beneficial knowledge? The Quran and the Sunnah. We need to know, what does the Quran and the Sunnah mean? And you don't have to wait until you know everything to go start telling people. What you learn, go tell. People say smoking is makruh. No, smoking is haram. Simple. It's haram. That's something that we can tell people. But we can't tell someone who's smoking, like, haram, akhi, this is haram. They're going to repel from you. And they might call you Wahhabi. They do, right? I was called that. I didn't know Wahhabi until I came here. Alhamdulillah. But I thought they were telling me that I was wasabi, but I swear by Allah, it's like, what do you mean by wasabi? I'm not wasabi. I was like, no, Wahhabi. It's like, what is Wahhabi? But that's a different story. That happened in Penang, subhanAllah. Because I was leaving the salah quickly after making my tasbih. They called me, are you Wahhabi? I was like, what is that? Alhamdulillah. So seeking and establishing. So it's not about gaining or seeking. So we seek to establish that beneficial knowledge in our life. So we need to establish beneficial knowledge in our life. And also to establish peace and harmony. I can establish peace and harmony within myself. I can control that. I can influence my family. I can influence my community. Can I control my family? Cannot. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who guides. So I can influence my family. I can influence my community. Can I control my community? I cannot. I can give him nasiha. I can influence, right? So we establish that peace and collaboration. Then after that, at a state level or at a business level, establish that economical unity. And then it grows as in economical independence. Right? So if the state has economical independence, then they are united within themselves. So if they are united themselves, just copy and paste. Whatever they did here, do it in the neighboring Muslim countries. And expand the community. That's how you establish unity. It's one way to do it. After that, open economic independence amongst the whole community. So we focus on what we can do, establishing beneficial knowledge. So the first step that we must do is that we need to take this very seriously. We need to make this very urgent in our life. Our life depends on this. If we make that, that's step number one. To establish beneficial knowledge, we need to establish the urgency of this matter in our lives. If we're taking it for granted, we will never establish that knowledge in our life. It's like, yeah, it's okay, I'm okay. I know enough. No. Rule number one to be successful: never be satisfied with your achievements. Always, especially when it comes down to seeking beneficial knowledge, always ask for more. Always ask for more. Because in the contract, as I mentioned before, we are at one end, and who's at the other end? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you are in contract with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you want more of that contract? I do. We all do. I have no doubt about it. But how we do it? Step number one, and believe me, this is something that has been practiced and has been effective in helping other people. Number one, make sure you believe that this matter is very urgent for you, as if you're dying tomorrow, or you're dying in 1 hour. You can do something in 1 hour, right? You can learn something. So establish that, or establish something that you learned. Number two, you need to pick your guidance. Who's going to help you through this journey? You need to pick. He's going to be part of the Jemaah. You cannot go someone Shia and tell him, you know what, I want to be part of the Jemaah, and help me. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. You end up Shia without you knowing. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So what's the benefit of having the right person? You need to smartly pick the guidance for you, to guide you through this. How is that going to be helpful? One is he helps you through the changing process, because you will be going through, or we are in a changing process. But during the changing process, we will see things that is new to us. How do we know? Like you said, how do I know to go there? He will help you be on target. This person that you choose for yourself, he will help you be always on target. What's your target? Is to follow the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ as it was taught and as it was understood by his companions. And the second thing that this guidance will give you is to support you to remove barriers, things that you don't understand, things that hinder you from external. I've had one person I knew in Canada called me. I was in San Diego. He called me. He's like, Ammar, I have this guy. He's telling me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Makkar. Makkar means plotting. Is that true? I said, yeah, it's true. Allah is plotting. What's wrong with that? It's like, but Makkar in Arabic is a bad word. Makkar means plotting in a bad way. I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is plotting against those who plot. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of plotters. I said, you can think of it as a plot. We can think of it as a planner. We cannot say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't plan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is planning against those who plan against Islam. It's like, oh, okay. So he had a barrier, he had a misunderstanding. Like, whoa, this doesn't make sense. Allah has this description, and it's in the Quran. Help me. So I helped him. And he moved on. So having that person in your life that you're able to call him in the middle of the night, I might not know, and I couldn't go find out. So having that connection with the person to guide you is very important. Coming here, asking questions is very important. Being in dialogue, thinking, not just following, is very important. And the rule of thumb is, when you go to any session or kuliya or anything, if you ask a question, a challenging question, in a polite way, Malay way, not offending, and the answer or the perception from the people was to criticize your question, know that there is something fishy about that knowledge. You need to investigate further, right? We cannot assume everything they say is wrong, but we need to have these filters in our head. And of course, you need to develop a vision. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? You need to have a strategy. The Prophet ﷺ had a strategy in every battle he had. In the da'wah, when he had da'wah with the Quraysh, his vision was clear. His strategy was to make a deal with them. Every person who leaves from Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ, who leaves from Mecca means become a Muslim, and he goes to Medina, the Prophet ﷺ was supposed to return him back. Right? Is there any tissue? And And the deal was, for any person who leaves Medina going to Mecca, Mecca will keep him. That was the deal. The Prophet ﷺ accepted that strategy. Oh, Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much. So having a strategy and having a clear vision is very important. So therefore you need to develop that vision. Is it your vision? Or is it something collaborative with your family that you can work together? I recommend the second one. But don't wait until you get married and have a family. If you're not married and have a family, until you have a vision. If you're single, have a vision now. You don't have to wait. Then communicate your vision. You can start with yourself, and then you tell the extended family, your brothers, your cousins. You can extend your vision internally. That's how the da'wah was with the Prophet ﷺ. He started with his home. He started with his wife, and he started with his cousins, his nephews and children. I mean, that's how it started, from the home. And then it grew, relatives, and then it grew, community. That's how it grows. So we don't need to jump to the masjid. We start with our family. Because those in our family might be going to those masjids and very active in these masjids and these kulliyas and very good listeners. But when you come and talk to them, there's different relationship that you can start with. So share your vision, share your strategy. You get collaboration from others. Put a set, action plan. What do you need to do today? What do you need to achieve by this week? On yourself, on your family, on your community, on your relatives, and so forth. Then you need to assess and improve. How are you going? You assess with your guidance person. Like, I'm doing this, is that good? And then you assess, am I achieving what I want to do this week? Did I do it last week? Okay, let me do it this week. Or was it right? And then you need to improve. And whatever you improve and you establish in your life, you need to fixate it. You need to make sure that doesn't move. So you need to have a reassurance way to make sure that what you achieve, you don't lose. So these are the basic steps that we can do. I mean, if we don't make this as an urgent matter for us, all the other steps we might lose focus on. So therefore, the most important thing that we need to understand the urgency of this. Only 1% of these groups will be going to heaven, and then the other steps will follow. And then the second major step is to establish peace and collaboration. So when you share your vision with people that are coming to the masjid, there'll be some collaboration, helping each other for the vision and helping each other to establish the vision for each one and moving forward to be part of this Jemaah, and to reach out to others to establish also peace across different communities or different families, and eventually collaborate together, inshallah, for that vision. So I finished with what I wanted to share with you. Any comments or questions? Everybody anxious to pray? Yes. Everything? Yes. Yeah, very good question. So the question, if I understand correctly, doing something sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and waiting for the reward or accepting the reward might dilute the sincerity feeling, right? Actually it's not, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, when you're sincere, you'll be rewarded. We're not making that up. So that can be part of the areas that some people might get confused about the sincerity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, act and be sincere in your actions to me, and you will be rewarded. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that, then we do that. Yeah. A lot of people, they even go to jihad at the time of establishing the Islamic State in Afghanistan. They were going to jihad to have Hawr al-Ain. That's one of the reward of shaheed. It's acceptable. So, accepting the reward, expecting the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised you, yes. Doing the action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us for that reward is acceptable also. Because again, we are here to worship Allah, and if we worship Allah, we'll be rewarded. And that's a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something that we kind of concluded. It's not like someone's opinion, right? So,
Within the right intention.
yes, he's saying with the right intention, if you have sincerity, he's saying that expecting that reward might dilute the sincerity. And I say no, it doesn't, because that reward is promised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's an automatic result for the sincere action.
What was people who went for jihad for the wrong intention? Like,
I mentioned the hadith. The first one was judged was the person who made jihad for the wrong intention. He was the first to put in hellfire.
that's what it's so
Yeah, there are many people who do that all over the place. Many people. How do we know what's in their heart? It's between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I cannot judge. Yes, sister. You want the best job for yourself because? If you qualify to do that, no, absolutely not. If that is truly presenting you, then no, you should do that. You should tell them your qualification. That's fair. And you shouldn't be unfair to yourself. You need to be fair in meeting their expectations while you're also being fair that you can do that job, as well as you are telling them what you can do. That's a fair representation of yourself, right? Did I answer your question? Any other questions or comments? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, if you see, if I go back to that slide, one of the reasons of disunity, one of the causes of disunity is extremism. The Prophet ﷺ had 3 people come to him. One said that I will fast and I will never have a day without fasting. And the other person said I will not marry. And the other said I will not sleep, I will stay up. These are extremists. Understanding of our extremism because of the media, we think the extremists are those who are fighting and killing other people. Extremism in many different ways. So extremism can be in tasbih. People sit and make tasbih. طب يا أخي, your children don't have food, like I'm making tasbih. The food is not going to come here, أخي. You need to go after it. That's extremism. Does that answer your question? Have you seen a Shia pray? They're praying better than you and me. Have you seen a priest pray? Have you seen a priest pray? I can tell you that sometimes they sound much more sincere than the people who come who do khutbah here. I can assure you that. But what does that mean? Nothing. Why? Because they're not doing the correct actions. They can sound sincere, but they're doing wrong actions. So therefore, the action is part of the acceptance. So if they're being extremists, and the Prophet ﷺ gave us an example of this extremism about the salah and at night and never sleep. And Allah corrected that mindset. It's a mindset. It's not really sincerity or better in worship. The Prophet ﷺ said, I fast and I eat. I marry women. I pray and I sleep. So it's about balance. Anything beyond that is considered to be extremist, even though they might appeal to you as something good. And that's why you need that guidance I mentioned, establishing that person to guide you. These are barriers and obstacles that might sometimes confuse us. Having that person coming to these sessions, asking these questions is very important. Shying away from asking, you're only harming yourself. Because from my side, I can assure you, if I don't know, I would say I don't know, but I'll go find out. But if I know, I'll share what I know. And that's beneficial to you and to everybody who's listening. Questions? Comments? Did I address you're satisfied? Does that answer? Alhamdulillah. Any other questions or comments? Going once? That's it? Any questions from the back? No? Okay? Yes, brother. Is it a what? Is it wrong to disassociate ourselves from the people of bid'ah? Okay. It depends. How do you see yourself? If you see yourself strong, being amongst them, to give them da'wah, to be a good example, for them to come and ask you questions, then stay. You should be part of them because they need you. They don't know that they need you. See, there are different. There are 4 types of people. There's a person who the people are different types. One is if a person knows, he has knowledge, and he knows that he knows. He knows, and he knows that he knows. Another type of person is the person who doesn't know, and he doesn't know that he doesn't know. And a person who knows but doesn't know that he knows, and a person who doesn't know and he knows that he doesn't know. These are the 4 types. It doesn't go beyond that. So if these people don't know, they don't have the right knowledge, and they don't know that they don't know, that's very dangerous. They are immense dangerous. And if they don't know, then you know that they don't know. You need to be there. You need to go wake them up. You need to make them aware that they don't know something that is correct. When you build that awareness in them, then they start thinking, oh, I really need to do something about that. Then they start taking action, that they'll be leading themselves. When you'll be next to them, guiding them. So you'll be the guide for them. And so on. If a person knows themselves, they cannot handle it. They don't have the skills. That's it. رحم الله امرئ عرف قدر نفسه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on the person who knows his limits. So we must know our limits. That's why I mentioned earlier, don't overburden yourself, because that can backfire. And then you need to work on yourself. But you already established these pillars that you established in your life, and you established all that knowledge in your life. By overburdening yourself, you might fall behind on yourself. But you need to strike that balance. And you are the only one who should be able to know your ability and limits. Hopefully I answered the question. You wanna, is that? Alhamdulillah. More questions. 3 people benefit from the questions. The person who asks, the person who is answering, and those who are listening. So don't think that by asking a question is taking anybody's time or wasting anybody's time. It's a benefit for all of us. And also giving time for the people who wants to make wudu. They can make wudu and come back to get ready for the salah. So any other questions or comments? All good, inshallah? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.